please join me in welcoming Dr. Joel Hellman, the Dean of the Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Service.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Great to have you here at Georgetown University at the Walsh School of Foreign Service. Let me first start off by thanking everyone at CERES, Angela and the team at CERES for putting together this conference, Andy Cutchins, and everyone who worked hard on this. Let me especially also thank our partners in this, the Carnegie Corporation of New York, Vart and Gregorian, of course, and Diana Arsenian. It's great to partner with Carnegie in this important event. Let me start, if I can, in welcoming you to Georgetown, to also give you a little background on the School of Foreign Service, which hosts CERES and hosting this event, because it's an important background for the discussion today. So some of you may know that the School of Foreign Service is the oldest school of international affairs in the United States. It was created nearly 100 years ago. In 1919, we're about to celebrate our centennial anniversary in 2019. And it was created at an extraordinary moment in world history. It was created in the immediate aftermath of the devastation of World War I. It was created precisely at the moment that world leaders gathered together in Paris to discuss the future of the world order. Woodrow Wilson got on a steamship early January 1919, traveled to Paris, and stayed with representatives, leaders of over 50 countries for nearly 6 months. 6 months. And every single day of the week, almost every day of the week, negotiated for 6 to 8 hours a day the future of the world order. Now, many people would enthusiastically encourage some world leaders to also go to Paris for 6 months and spend some time thinking about the world order. But given the fact that we don't do business like that anymore, we do have, and we did have at that time, an effort to rethink the entire global order, every aspect of it, alliances and organizations, treaties, trade, and also a new principle, a new understanding of the way international affairs would work. In fact, the introduction of what would ultimately be seen as the liberal order. Now, fast forward 100 years from that year in which, in the spirit of redefining the world order, it was decided to create a new school of international affairs to train leaders in that world order and the new principles of that world order. We're in a moment 100 years later in which many of the key principles, many of the key values, many of the key aspects that framed the global order are now being questioned. And we feel 100 years later that we have an obligation, a responsibility, and an opportunity to ensure that the School of Foreign Service in the middle of Washington, D.C., with its reputation, with its incredible network of alumni and its incredible reach, be a platform for deep discussion about where the global order is going. What the principles and values are that have sort of secured the peace and prosperity over the last 100 years, or tried to, how those principles and ideas need to be rethought, need to be debated. What are the issues that we missed and didn't understand? What are the driving forces of change that are going to shape the global order in the next century? And that, we feel, is our mission. That's the mission animated by our centennial anniversary. That's the mission animated by our history. And it's in that context that we're so pleased to be hosting this event today. Because the relationship with Russia, U.S. relationship with Russia, has been an important part, of course, of one of the animating features of global politics in the century. It's also been an important animating feature, an important part of the school. The school is named after Edmund A. Walsh, Reverend Edmund A. Walsh. 1 year after the school was formed, Reverend Walsh went to Russia was one of the few Westerners who spent an extended period of time in Russia during the Civil War, setting up, with Vatican support, one of the largest feeding operations during the famine created by the Civil War, and went back and forth for the better part of 3 years in the early days of the school, engaging with Russia and the region. He became an important figure, actually, in sort of shaping America's response to the Soviet Union, America's response to what he saw as a deep communist threat. He also set Georgetown up as an important landing point for scholars and others who were deeply thinking about what's happening in the region. So we have a strong history as part of a long engagement with Russia. And me personally, if you will permit me to just say a bit of my own personal story, I've been dean here for 3 years. I spent about 15 to 20 years in development, working mostly in Asia and Africa, but I started my career as a Soviet specialist. I actually started studying the Soviet Union in 1980 and started traveling and visiting there frequently through the 80s. And as a graduate student, had the great privilege of being immersed in Soviet studies at the very point at which the Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union collapsed. There was a remarkable change in the global order that led to a tremendous burst of optimism that anything was possible in global relationships. You'll remember Frank Fukuyama talking about the end of history. Students were engaging on economic issues, in the media, on social issues, on political issues. It was an extraordinarily heady time for those of us who were interested in the region and interested in how that region was shaping the world. Now we come back 30 years later, and we see, and we are at a very different pivot point in that relationship. The arc of change that we expected and we hoped would be maintained has shifted in many ways, not in many different directions. There are still opportunities, there are constraints, but we find ourselves in a moment in which this simplistic, linear assumption of how Russia would develop, how the region would develop, and how US-Russian relations would develop have been challenged. You know, I had an opportunity to meet with some of our graduate students, and they're here today. And in fact, every year I get a chance to talk to our graduate students who are embarking on the study of the region. And when I first started meeting with those graduate students and talking about my own personal history and my own research, I happened to be researching Russia at a time when the oligarchs were just beginning, when the new kind of conglomerates were developing, when people like Khodorkovsky and Potanin and Prokhorov were building their empires. And the conversations that I would have with students during the time was, tell us about that time. We want to hear more about how Russia was changing and developed, the roots of oligarchy and the unusual relationship between economics and business. Now when I met the students, the interest was actually much less on the period of what happened after the wall fell and what happened in after the Soviet breakup. The interest is actually more about what happened during the Cold War and how US-Russian relationships were shaped by American understandings of the Cold War and how that shaped the way we saw the Soviet Union. Why? Because they're interested in the extent to which our own ideology, our own understanding of our security is also shaping the way we see Russia today. And I think that's where the subject of today's conference is so interesting. Putin's fourth term. I'm glad you put the number 4 on it. I can't imagine. It's certainly, perhaps, I would assume, not the last, or maybe that's a question you'll be asking yourselves. But it seems more than just the number. This is the 4th term. There is something beyond that. It's not a term, it's Putinism. Is there a sense that Putin as president has shaped and radically shaped the way we understand Russia and Russia's trajectory? And what the students were asking today is, to what extent is that really true? Is this a place, a huge and important, complex nation shaped by one man and one man's background, identity, and political vision? Or is there a deeper understanding of what's happening in Russia that we have to ask ourselves, in which Putin is part of the story, but only part of the story? So I think you have an opportunity to talk about that today. It's shaped by history, shaped by our understanding of the Soviet Union and Russia and American relations with the Soviet Union and Russia over the course of now over 30 years. You have an opportunity to put those issues on the table, discuss them, engage them, and help us shape and think about where U.S.-Russia relations will be going in the next sort of century. And I think that's our obligation. That's what we are here for in Washington, D.C., and that's why we are so pleased to be able to welcome you to discuss this important set of issues. So it's in that spirit that I wish you a successful day. I know you're going to have an extraordinary set of discussions, starting with really an unprecedented panel bringing 5 of the former ambassadors to Russia together to give their perspectives, then go into the economics, the politics, the diplomacy and engagement to really understand what Putinism means, what Putinism is, how our understanding of Putin shapes our understanding of Russia and U.S.-Russia relations. So I really welcome you. I welcome the discussion. I look forward to the outcomes of the discussion. I hope it helps to shape the debate. I hope it helps us shape our relationships going forward. And I hope it shapes what I'm surely is going to be a fascinating set of discussions. So thank you very much. Great to have you here. And let me now turn it back over to Angela Stent to begin the discussions.